Welcome to Twisted Truths, where betrayal meets brutal payback, and where the most unexpected twists expose what people are really capable of. This story isn't just shocking, it's personal. My name is Marshall Vane, and for 14 years, I built something real. Not in the way corporate execs love to brag about, through PowerPoints and mergers, but with grit, human connection, and relentless commitment. I ran the Midwest division of Betrayal Uniform Solutions, a company that used to be a scrappy supplier for local banks and clinics. When I started, it was me, a rental van, and a warehouse that flooded every time it rained. 14 years later, my division was the reason we hit national prominence, $6.3 million in contracts annually, a 92% client retention rate, and a staff who trusted me like family. I personally handled our biggest accounts, Meridian Finance, Tallgrass Medical, and Palmside Credit Union. I knew their kids' names. Attended 2 of their weddings. Took midnight calls when orders were botched by vendors. I solved it, quietly and fast. But none of that mattered when Elliot Granger walked into the picture. Elliot was the new CEO, courtesy of our acquisition by a private equity firm called Bracton Capital. He was all buzzwords and spreadsheets, like a robot wrapped in a 3-piece suit. Slicked back hair. Harvard MBA. Said things like, disruptive recalibration, and, margin optics. He didn't ask about my team. Never inquired how we kept growing while other regions bled clients. Didn't even shake my hand properly the first time we met, he just nodded like I was a contractor fixing his toilet. The firing happened in a 5-minute meeting on a Wednesday. We're restructuring to realign with shareholder goals, he said with a smile so thin it was practically a sneer. Your role is no longer essential. I blinked. I manage $6.3 million in active contracts. We've analyzed the model, he said smoothly. Your accounts can be redistributed. Just like that. Security waited outside the door like I was a thief. I wasn't even allowed to say goodbye to my team. They handed me a box, my fishing trophy from Tallgrass Medical, photos of my kids, and a mug that read Best Damn Boss. I walked out of the building I'd given my life to, my sweat, my weekends, my son's soccer games missed. And Elliot? He didn't even flinch. That day, I didn't just lose my job. I lost what I'd built. I lost who I was. But I wasn't angry, not yet. That came later. The next morning, I sat in my kitchen at 6:43 a.m. like I had for the last 14 years, except there was no inbox overflowing with vendor updates, no call from Lorraine about uniform color discrepancies, no emergency order to approve. There was just black coffee. And the slow, gnawing realization that I didn't matter to them at all. My wife, Claire, tiptoed into the room and gave me that look, the one people give when they're trying not to say, I told you they'd screw you over eventually. She didn't say it. Just rested a hand on my shoulder and asked, what now? I had no answer. None. For 14 years, I was Betrayal. Now, I was just some middle-aged man with a cardboard box full of broken loyalty. The worst part wasn't even getting fired. It was the absence that followed. No email from Elliot. No farewell from HR. Not even a company-wide note acknowledging my departure. It was like I'd never existed. The team I'd fought for, mentored, promoted, they went radio silent. My name became nuclear overnight. I sat in the living room scrolling LinkedIn, watching Elliot post about reshaping Betrayal into a data-driven industry disruptor. That post had over 300 likes, mostly from sycophants who barely survived Q3 without my division's numbers. That afternoon, I went for a walk. Just to move. I passed the park where I used to coach my son's baseball team, and a woman smiled at me in that half-recognition kind of way. Didn't you used to work for Betrayal? She asked. Used to. Like I was someone who died. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. She said she worked at one of our client branches, Palmside Credit Union. She told me she'd just gotten a letter saying all account services would now be handled by new integration partners. Said the letter was cold. No rep name. No contact number. Was that you? She asked. Were you the one we used to talk to? I choked on my answer. Yeah. That was me. She frowned. Well, that's a shame. You were the only one who actually gave a damn. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. My phone buzzed once. It was a message from Logan Anders, my former assistant. Hey Marshall. HR told us not to contact you. I'm so sorry. None of us wanted this. It's not the same without you. I stared at that text until the screen dimmed. I didn't reply. Because I didn't want pity. I wanted the truth. And I was about to find it. It started with a whisper, an unexpected email that hit my personal inbox 3 days after I was let go. Subject line, you need to see this. L. It was from Logan, my former assistant. No message body, just a PDF attached. I clicked it open, expecting maybe a farewell note. Instead, I found a confidential presentation labeled Phase 2, Operational Streamlining, Executive Summary. Created by Elliot Granger. 2 weeks before he fired me. Each slide was like a punch to the gut. Slide 4, Legacy Personnel Risk Profile. My name was there, in bold, under, high influence, low adaptability. Slide 6, Target Elimination List. Keith, Janine, Raphael, my people. Every one of them had a red X next to their name. All marked for voluntary exit incentivization, a euphemism for being slowly pushed out once I was gone. Slide 12 stopped my heart. Projected revenue increase, 18.7%. Assumption, clients retained despite staff transition. Action, increase rates across legacy contracts post-departure. They weren't just replacing me. They were counting on dismantling everything we built, quietly, systematically, and with spreadsheets to justify the fallout. They assumed no one would care enough to leave. That the relationships I spent years cultivating could be automated. That loyalty had an expiration date. And then, the kicker. Slide 18, Notes. If clients raise concerns, frame departures as strategic realignment. Maintain strict control over former employee communication. Legal review of Vane's non-solicit recommended. Legal review. I scoured my files. 14 years ago, I signed a basic contract. No non-solicit clause. Just a 6-month non-compete with 3 companies, none of which still existed. That night, I called Eric Mendez, a former VP who left before the acquisition. He'd been through Elliot's tactics before at another firm. He's a cleaner, Eric said. Comes in, guts the soul out of companies for short-term profit. He doesn't believe in people. Just numbers. I told him about the deck. The planned cuts. The rate hikes. The assumptions. Eric was quiet. Then he said, Marshall, they didn't fire you because you failed. They fired you because you succeeded on human terms, and that scared them. That's when it clicked. This wasn't just about revenge. This was about defending something real from being erased by arrogance. I pulled out an old notebook where I kept all my handwritten notes, client birthdays, little preferences, handwritten thank you notes from branch managers. These weren't just numbers. They were people. And people remember who shows up when it matters. It was time to start planning. But not for a comeback. For a reckoning. The next morning, I was up before sunrise. Claire found me at the kitchen table with my old leather notebook open and my laptop glowing. You're smiling, she said cautiously, setting down a mug of coffee. That scares me a little. I'm not angry, I replied. I'm focused. Because here's the thing, Elliot and his board believed they could replace relationships with automation. But I had something they didn't. Trust. I'd never kept client info on company systems. I used my own notes, my own contacts, and my own phone. Not for any shady reason, but because when a CEO changes every 2 years, continuity becomes personal. It was just easier that way. And now, that trust was about to pay off. I started with Derek Kim, VP of Procurement at Tallgrass Medical. We'd survived a 3-month shipment nightmare together during COVID. I didn't pitch him. I didn't bash Carl. I simply called and told him the truth. I'm no longer with the company. His first words, "What? Who's handling our spring rollout?" "They haven't told me," I said honestly. I was walked out with zero transition. A long pause. "We've been getting cold calls from someone named Shelley. She doesn't know the product line." "Marshall, what's really going on?" I told him I couldn't say much yet. But if he needed a new partner, hypothetically, in a few months, I might be in a position to help. He replied, "We're holding off any renewals until we hear from you." And that was just the beginning. That week, I made 6 calls. Every one of them led to the same conversation. Every one of them waited. I mapped my core team, those still at Carl who hadn't yet been fired, Janine, Raphael, Keith, and Logan. I reached out one at a time, careful not to spook them. When Keith called me back, his voice was hollow. "They've reassigned me to product development. No client contact allowed. They stripped my access, Marshall. They're trying to freeze you out before they cut you loose." "Exactly," he said. "What do I do?" "You wait. I'm working on something. But when the moment comes, I'll call." Then came the big break. A voicemail from Trent Baylor, CEO of Wyndham and Nash, one of our former competitors. "Marshall, heard what happened. Your name's been buzzing. I've got an offer, consultant, flexible hours, bring your own clients. Let's talk equity." I didn't say yes, not yet. I needed leverage. And I needed time. Instead, I told him the truth. "I'm not interested in being someone else's safety net. But I might be building something of my own." There was a pause. Then he said, "Well, in that case, maybe we should talk about investment." That night, I drew up a plan. Not to destroy Carl. But to replace them. Not out of vengeance. But because they'd left their people behind. And I was done letting that slide. By week 3, I had built the skeleton of something real. Not a revenge scheme, a resurrection. I called it Harbor and Flint. The name came from 2 places, Harbor, for safety, and Flint, for fire. It wasn't even a company yet. Just a plan. But to the people who mattered, it was already more real than Carrawell's hollow restructuring ever could be. I met with Trent Baylor in a quiet corner of a downtown steakhouse. He'd brought his CFO, and I brought my pitch, my people, my clients, my roadmap. "We'll provide startup capital," Trent said after reviewing it. "And hands-off backing. But I want you to build it your way. You'll retain controlling interest." Done. The next step was the team. I sent 5 messages that night. "I have an offer. Full salaries. Benefits. Equity. We start quiet. We start now. You in?" Janine replied in under a minute. "Been waiting for this." "I'm in." Keith called crying. Not sad tears, relieved. By Friday, all 5 had resigned from Carl. Elliot didn't even see it coming. At the same time, I quietly arranged lunches and coffee meetings with old contacts, not to poach, not yet, but to listen. What I learned. Carl was slipping. Fast. Shelley, Elliot's golden girl, had already fumbled 2 rollouts. Clients were calling help desks in India for uniform orders. Contracts weren't being renewed. And worse, Elliot had no idea who was loyal to him and who wasn't. One morning, I got a message from Leah Trenton, a longtime Carrowell project manager. FYI, Elliot's freaking out. Board's asking why 40% of legacy clients haven't renewed. He's blaming you. Saying you're violating some agreement. I wasn't. My lawyer checked everything. No non-solicit. No NDA. No breach. All I was doing was showing up for people who missed me. I still hadn't pitched anyone. But one by one, they started asking the same thing. Where are you going next, Marshall? And I'd answer, you'll know when it's time. The shift came when Meridian Finance called. Their procurement officer sounded nervous. We're getting pressure from Carrowell. They want a multi-year renewal now. But, we don't trust them. Don't sign anything, I said. Give me 2 weeks. Because Harbor and Flint was almost ready. And when it launched, it was going to change everything. Harbor and Flint went live on a Tuesday. No press release. No LinkedIn blast. Just a quiet launch page, a private announcement to 5 legacy clients, and a simple message. We're here if you need us. By Wednesday, Meridian Finance signed a 1-year contract. By Friday, Tallgrass Medical followed. And by the following Monday, Palmside Credit Union sent over a full RFP, requesting me by name as account lead. It was happening. No marketing. No sales calls. Just reputation. And then came the firestorm. I woke up to a legal envelope on my doorstep, cease and desist, from Carrowell. Alleging interference, poaching, and misappropriation of proprietary relationships. I called Paul Radley, my lawyer. After reading it, he laughed. They've got nothing. If they go public with this, Discovery will rip them apart. He was right. Because the moment Carrowell opened the door to litigation, everything becomes evidence. Including the internal deck Elliot had used to justify firing me, where he called me a relationship-dependent liability, and listed staff by name for termination. A week later, I got an email from Susan Mendel, Carrowell's board chair. Marshall, we'd like to discuss resolving this amicably. Perhaps a consulting agreement or transition support. I didn't even reply. But someone else did. Trent Baylor. He sent a response through legal. Harbor and Flint declines your proposal. Any further threats will be met with countersuit. But that wasn't the real twist. The real twist came in the form of a whisper from inside Carrowell itself. A former finance manager reached out. She'd been quietly let go, but not before downloading key documents. Including a revised slide from Elliot's internal presentation. Slide 19, Marshall Vane return scenarios. Yes. You read that right. They had secretly planned to bring me back after the fallout, under worse terms, no team, no autonomy, no equity. Just a glorified fixer role. The betrayal hadn't just been about getting rid of me. It was about breaking me down so they could buy me back cheaper. They didn't fire me because I was obsolete. They fired me because I was too expensive to control. And that's when I knew it wasn't revenge anymore. It was war. Not the kind fought with lawsuits. But the kind fought with reputation, proof, and the one thing I had that Elliot never would, trust. Because clients don't follow companies. They follow people who show up when it matters. And Elliot? He just handed me the torch. 2 months after our launch, Harbor and Flint wasn't just surviving. We were thriving. 5 of Carrowell's former cornerstone clients had jumped ship, on their own. I didn't chase them. I didn't pitch them. I just answered the phone when it rang. Because when people feel seen, heard, and valued, they come back to that feeling like gravity. And that's what Elliot never understood. Numbers don't create loyalty. People do. One morning, I was setting up a whiteboard for a client onboarding session when Keith rushed in, wide-eyed. "Turn on the news." I did. There it was. Breaking: Carraoul Apparel's CEO Elliot Granger resigns amid client exodus and financial instability. I froze. The anchor went on to explain. Sources close to the board suggest massive client losses in the Midwest division, formerly the company's top-performing region, triggered the resignation. A shareholder call is scheduled later today. I said nothing. I didn't cheer. I didn't smile. But inside, something unknotted. Later that week, I got a call. Unknown number. I answered. "Marshall, it's Eleanor Barnes. I'm the new interim chair of Carrawell's board. I'd like to meet." I agreed. We sat down in a hotel conference room overlooking the city skyline. She didn't waste time. "We misjudged you. Elliot acted without full board consent. We want to make it right." She slid a folder across the table. CEO offer. Full autonomy. Board seat. 12% equity. A formal apology. I stared at the papers. Then I asked one question. "Why me, now?" She hesitated. "Because clients won't take our calls unless your name is attached." I nodded. That was the only truth I needed. "I'm honored," I said slowly. "But I'm already building something. Something that won't throw people away for margin gains." Eleanor looked stunned. "So that's a no?" "It's a hell no." That afternoon, I gathered my Harbor and Flint team. I told them everything: Carrawell's offer, the equity, the apology. Janine leaned back in her chair, smirking. "So, what do we call this phase?" I smiled. "We call it freedom." 3 weeks later, we got an offer we did accept. A strategic acquisition, not from Carraoul, but of them. Their Midwest division was bleeding cash. The board couldn't keep it afloat. Trent called it pennies on the dollar. We called it poetic justice. Harbor and Flint absorbed the assets, rehired displaced workers, and rebuilt the team from the inside out. No celebration. No gloating. Just quiet, deliberate redemption. In the end, truth has a way of surfacing, even if it comes twisted through pain and betrayal. As one wise voice once said, sometimes your greatest enemy was once your closest ally. If this story struck a chord with you, let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, share, and spread the word, because justice deserves to be heard.